How's it going, guys? Welcome to another Soul Encoded tutorial. Today we're going over the solutions video to my part 2 of the data structures, objects, and arrays videos. Now, if you haven't already solved this challenge, I highly recommend you guys do that first. And then come back and see if your solutions were similar to what my solutions. Without further ado, let's dive into the challenges. So, today we're going to be solving two challenges. The first one is going to be another sum up all arrays challenge. I have already copied it over here. And the other challenge that we're going to be solving is the deep compare problem. Let's dive right into the first problem. As you can see in this first problem, we just have a variable array that has a few numbers inside of the array, and the sum of each item in the array should equal to 18. So there's many ways to solve this problem, but immediately my first thought is to use a for loop. But we have already gone over that example before, where we just iterate over the array, create like some kind of temporary value, and then you add up the values inside the array and then return the summation of that. However, for this particular challenge, my recommendation was for you guys to look into the documentation and try to find a method that was attached to the array object that will help you solve this problem. So if you guys did some research, there's a few things that you could do. You could use like a for each, array.forEach, and then iterate over the array. But there's a specific method called reduce that solves this problem for us elegantly. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a variable called total, and then we'll basically return the result of array.reduce. And then here we're gonna pass in two parameters, which is basically the current sum and then the next number. And this is how, basically this is the syntax for the reduce function, and you're expected to pass your arguments like so. And then you return a plus b, and that's essentially it. So let's go ahead and log total. When we invoke this, we get 18. So that's essentially how you solve this first problem. Very simple, very straightforward. I hope you guys are able to solve it. Let's move on to the deep compare challenge. So I have just copied over the problem. One caveat of JavaScript that I have explained in the previous lesson is the fact that when you compare two objects, even though their key values are exactly the same, when you compare them, the value will read false. So let's demonstrate that right now. Let's comment this out, and we'll console log object1 triple equals object2. And then when we log this, the value will be false. And I have mentioned before that this is the reason this happens is because in JavaScript there's no easy way to compare. When you compare two objects, because they're referencing different points in memory, they're considered to be not equal to each other, even if their key values are the same. So how do we solve this? Well, basically in this challenge, we're gonna try to solve this problem. But I wanna kind of go through this problem in kind of an organic way, so that you could kind of understand what, how programmers kind of solve problems and think of edge cases and things like that. So let's dive into the deep compare problem. So right here, we need to first pass in our objects. Here, let's just say A and B for now. Now, so we have passed in this value, and let's just solve this problem for this specific example. Meaning when the object 1 has a key value pair of num equals 5, and same with object 2. So how do we solve it for just this one problem? Well, the simplest thing we can do is compare them directly. We know what the key is and we know what the value is, so all we need to do is a.num equal b.num, and then this returns true, and if not, we'll just return false. So this should just straight up work, right? And that has returned true. Now, obviously we cheated a little bit because we're assuming that we know the values, and we know the keys, but what if you didn't know the key? So let's try to refactor this code so that it works with any number of key value pairs inside of an object. So let's go ahead and add a few. Let's add a string. We'll say hello. Likewise here, hello. And then in here, let's go ahead and delete this guy right here. Now let's use what we learned from the previous lesson and grab all of the keys, the key names, and store it in a temporary variable. So we could say var k1 key1 will equal object dot keys, and then we pass in the object. And then we could do this the same way with the second object. Now we have two variables, key1 and key2, that has all of the keys for object 1 and all the keys of object 2. One brief sanity check that we can do is if key1 dot length does not equal key2 dot length, then we could return false. Because if the lengths of these keys are different, then we immediately know that these two objects are not equal to each other, right? Because there will be one more key value pair or one less in one of the objects, therefore not equals. If not, we could return true. For now, the next thing we should do is we should iterate over all of the keys and then check if their values are equal to each other. So let's use a for loop here. For var I equals 0, I is less than key1 dot length I plus plus. And we could do this because we have already verified that they're equal in length. And then we could say if a key1 I does not equal b key2 and then I, then we could return false, right? Because if these numbers are if they're at any point, if the key value pairs do not equal to each other, then we could safely return false, right? So let's go and try that out. So now it's returned true because we have verified that these two objects are indeed equal. But there is an issue with this particular function. I wonder if you guys can spot it. Pause the video and see if you can spot it. So the issue is we're assuming right now that the key value pairs will be in order. So what happens if we did something like this, where we remove the string key value on object 2 to come out first, and then the num secondly. So obviously when we run this, the value will now be false. But in reality, those two objects are actually still true. So how do we resolve this problem? One simple thing that we can do is actually right here, we could probably just sort both key 1 and key 2. And if they really are the same, they will be sorted appropriately. And then this particular function will match the correct key value pairs to each other. So let's go and try that. And the value is true. So we have solved that edge case as well. So I hope you guys are kind of seeing how we're building this particular function out, and then thinking about, essentially thinking about how to break your own code. Because the more edge cases that you could think up up front, the less chances that your program will break. So that's something to really think about when you're writing code. So there is still another edge case to this particular function. Now, I wonder if you guys spot this one. As you guys know, objects can actually have another object inside of it, a nested object. So in here, we could say obj equals, and then we could right here just say another num equals 2 or something like that. And then right here, let's add the same object like so. Now we have a key value pair that has an object as a value. How do we deal with this particular situation? If we run this, the value will be actually false. The reason why is because it basically, when it's iterating over this, it'll hit this object equals to this object, and that will evaluate to false, and that's why it's returning false. So how do you fix this particular function now? My immediate thought is to use recursion. We have gone over recursion before, but the reason why I think we could use recursion is because we have solved this particular problem for one object. The deep compare problem right now, as it stands, this solution is able to return true or false for one object. So all we need to do is right here, recursively call the deep compare and pass in the next object. But how do we know if it's an object? Well, we have to first check if the value that we're checking is an object. So you could do it with a type of. If type of A equal, and then the string object, then now we know that this particular block of code will only run for objects. And all we have to do is pass in a deep compare. So we could say if deep compare, and then here's a little tricky part, but we say A key 1 I, and then we do B key 2 I, then we have to return false. But there's one issue with this, right? Because if this particular item is true, it will return true, but then we actually want to return true here. But then it will keep going through this particular block of code. So what we need to do is actually put a not there. And then that will make it so that if this particular object is not true, it will actually return false. So this will actually work right here. Now let's just continue on this block chain and then just add an else if, like so. And then now I think our program will actually work as intended. So previously this was false. Oh, looks like I made a little error here. Let me go ahead and fix that. Okay. And now the value is true. So let's go do a sanity check. Now let's look at this. Hey, there's something interesting going on here. I don't know if you guys caught it, but I purposely mistyped this num to numb, you know, because this could happen, right? Some key value pairs could be different, but if you notice, our value is still true. Now, why do you think that is? The thing is, as of right now, we are only, when we're actually, this particular block of this particular for loop is actually only checking the values. So we just happen to have a case where these main strings, these key value pairs are kind of going in order. And when we pass in this object again, this is the first index, and then we are comparing them to each other. So that's why it's still true, but this is actually false, right? So how can we solve this other edge case, right? So we right now we're only checking the values, but another thing we can do is check the key name as well. Right here, we can just add a block where we say key 1i does not equal to key 2i, then we just return false. Now let's try that again, and now it will return false because the name of this is different. So let's go ahead and change that and see if that will give us true, and it does. So this is kind of a roundabout way. Like, there's better ways to solve this problem, but I'm solving it this way, and I'm going through these kind of problems that you'll see as your program, and these kind of logic that you'll have to add so that your program could work as you really intended to be. So I'll just leave it here for now. We have a pretty solid test case. One thing that this doesn't solve, and I'm going to leave it further for you guys to solve on your own, is what about functions? What if there was a function here? So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this challenge. I hope you guys are chugging along on these programs. It's a new year. You know, it's the best time to get into programming now. It's never too late. You know, I myself, I never went to college for this stuff. It's never late to learn this kind of stuff. I started learning when I was like 26 or so. Not that 26 is old. It's like 26 is like not young, but it's not old. So, but yeah, so it's never too late, you know. So go for it, you know, chase after your dreams if this is what you want. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.